Where places where the Qurans, these are comparisons mostly between Hafs and Wash, or Hafs and Kaloon. Okay, sorry. But you're welcome to have a look at some of them. For example, the ones which I was just showing him
because
there.
Arabic, I'm
You're not good on Arabic, okay?
No,
well, neither am I. So all I can do is like say, look at 3,
but I know
1, 4, 6.
I know like the English, the Egyptian Arabic is different to, let's say, Saudi Arabic.
Okay, so here's Surah 3, Ayah 146.
Right.
Okay, this is the Hafs, what's in the Hafs Arabic of the Hafs version. This is the Arabic of the Kaloon and the Wash versions. Okay, now I can, even though I'm not Arabic reader, I can see that there's some slight difference there. In fact, it's highlighted. Yeah, of course. In fact, I'll try and make it bigger for you if I can.
Someone who speaks Arabic, what's going on?
Sure thing. Let's see whether I can make that so that...
No, it's not a problem. I can
make it bigger.
Just get this bit off the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So in this one, the words there, it's and many a prophet fought. Katala means, that's the verb for they fought. They fought, yeah?
Yeah, like fighting.
Okay, they fought. So many a prophet fought there. In Kaloon and Wash, it says, and many a prophet was killed. The word is kutila, okay? Now, obviously, kutila is similar to katala. Yeah, it's just like different vowel sounds and so on, yeah? Okay? Although it's written differently. But they have different meanings because in Hafs it means fought, katala means fought, kutila means was killed, okay? And obviously there is a difference between a person being fought or fighting and a person being killed, yeah? So there are different words with different meanings in Qurans, okay? I don't know whether you're familiar with the idea of the Qirat of the Qurans.
No.
There are 10 Qirat and 20 Ruwayat, okay, of the Quran.
But what I'm saying is,
different Arabic versions of the Quran.
You see the version, the Arabic version, the Saudi version.
That's they promote the Hafs version. Saudi Arabia has been promoting Hafs version since 1985. Okay, that's what 90-something% of Muslims are now using. They're using the Hafs version.
That's where it originally came down. In this language, in
Arabic,
this saying, this way.
How do you know that this is the right way rather than this one?
Because which is the way that is.
This is the one which is promoted by Saudi Arabia, but this is the one which they use in, for example, Algeria. In Algeria, in Algeria, this Hafs version is banned from the mosques. You're not allowed to use Hafs version in Algeria, okay? But in Saudi Arabia, for example, they would say you've got to use the Hafs version. You're not allowed to use the Kaloon or Wash version in our mosques, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah? So it shows they realize there's a difference between the Arabic Qurans.
I know there's difference in like English, like Egyptian Arabic, Saudi Arabic,
of course,
Moroccan Arabic.
Yeah. That's.
But we would say that the original is what would be what the Prophet came with. Whatever he said, that is the carved in stone.
Yeah.
And anything other than that is a translation. So this might be considered a translation to this.
It's not a translation, no.
Because it's not the fluent one that he came with, if that makes any sense.
Well,
I'd have to get someone that's Arabic.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, Muslim scholars would say they both come from what Muhammad spoke. Okay. They would say they're both versions of what Muhammad spoke.
Are they pronounced differently as well?
This one is Katala, that one is Kutila. So that is obviously just different pronunciation.
But we again, I can't talk much on it because my language is Arabic.
Same with me. I'm not Arabic either.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say is that if Jesus came with the gospel in ancient Aramaic and they translated it to, I don't know if ancient Aramaic and Aramaic is different, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, Aramaic or Syriac has progressed as the years went on. Yeah, of course, it did change as the years went on.
So if it was originally in ancient Aramaic, so Jesus spoke ancient Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken.
He spoke the Aramaic of his day.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever kind of Aramaic was being used in the time of Jesus, that's what he would have spoken normally, like with his family or with his friends and so on. He would have spoken Aramaic. If he was speaking to Romans or to Jews from other parts of the Mediterranean, he would have spoken in Greek. Okay.
What, Jesus spoke
Greek?
Languages?
Yeah, he would have definitely spoken Greek. Definitely spoke Greek as well. Okay, because about 20% of there's evidence that about 20% of Jews who lived in Jerusalem at the time of Jesus had Greek as their first language.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Greek was quite common because It's like English is today. If you go around different countries in the world,
Yeah, it's
different
common.
people come here to London. They all speak English. Even they might have come from wherever, Pakistan or Somalia or Brazil or whatever. But they speak English here in England because that's a common language. Yeah,
Definitely, I agree.
And if we're doing trade, if we're having trade with somewhere else, China or America, whatever country we're doing trade with, France, we'll often do our trade in English. Yeah. Because that's the kind of common language of trade, commerce. In those days, Greek was like the common language of trade, of commerce, If you wanted to buy and sell something, you use Greek.
Okay, that was the language of the day.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, if Jesus came with the gospel, which he did, and it was in Aramaic, and then someone translated his speech to the newer version of Aramaic, to go back to the core of the reference or the core of the gospel, we would have to go back to. So there might be a slight translation difference, but the core is still the exact words that Jesus spoke.
Right. Okay.
That's the root.
The gospels that we have in the Bible. Okay.
No,
the gospels we have in the Bible. There are 4 of them. Okay. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Yeah. 4 gospels in the Bible. There's 4 accounts of the life and teaching of Jesus. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So they are written in Greek. Okay, all 4 of them are written in Greek. Some people think that Matthew's Gospel was also written in Aramaic as well as in Greek. But definitely all the 4 Gospels that we have were written in Greek. Okay, so as I say, some people think Matthew wrote 2 versions, one in Aramaic and one in Greek. But we have the Greek ones in the Bible. Yeah. Okay.
But there's one before that though. The Aramaic.
There's no before that. Well, they wrote down in Greek what Jesus said. Okay, they wrote down. They were 2 of them were his followers. At least 2 of them were his followers. Yeah.
Who?
So Matthew was a disciple of Jesus. He was one of the 12 who went around with Jesus. And John, the apostle John, was also one of the disciples who went around with Jesus. Okay.
John the Baptist.
No, not John the Baptist. This John the Apostle. John the Apostle, not John the Baptist. I know it's confusing because they're the same name. Well, so I had to say John the Apostle or the Apostle John, He was one of Jesus' disciples. So he went around with Jesus. He heard what Jesus said, maybe even made notes. Because he definitely wrote, he could definitely read and write because he wrote his gospel, So, So we had and Luke, for example, says at the beginning of his gospel that he's carefully investigated and got the testimony from the eyewitnesses, okay, from people who went around with Jesus, like his mother Mary. He obviously used his mother Mary as one of his eyewitnesses. Also the other disciples he used, to find what did Jesus do and say. So although Luke wasn't one of those 12 disciples, he did use the accounts of those 12 disciples when he wrote his account, The Gospels were written between 20 and 50 years after the lifetime of Jesus, okay? So we're not talking about translating from a later version of Aramaic or an earlier version of Aramaic. They're in basically the same time scale, okay?
I thought Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John, they wrote those, they never saw Christ.
Oh yes, they did. Yeah, Matthew and John were definitely disciples of Jesus.
Because I thought that the New Testament came thousands of years, and then it got written up, and then
no, about 20 years. People say that. Well, scholars. I can only go by what scholars tell us. Okay, scholars tell us that that either Matthew or Mark was the first of the Gospels because they were both written about 20 years after Jesus' lifetime. Okay. So Matthew and Mark were 2 Gospels about 20 years after Jesus' lifetime. We know that Luke's Gospel must have been written before AD 64. Jesus died AD 33. So Luke's Gospel was written within 30 years of Jesus' lifetime. And John tells us when he wrote his Gospel. He says it's when he was in exile on the Isle of Patmos, which was in about AD 90. So his Gospel was about, 45, 50 years after the lifetime of Jesus. He wrote his account, So all 4 accounts were written between 20 and, say, 50 years after the time of Jesus, okay?
But where's
not thousands of years later.
Well, where's the gospel of Jesus though? Where's what he came with, his law?
Right, gospel means good news. The good news of Jesus is that he came, he died, he lived a perfect life, he died taking the punishment for our sins, and he rose again, showing that his work was completed. That is the gospel, okay, the good news of Jesus.
Where's his book?
There is no book of Jesus. Jesus didn't write a book, nor recited a book for other people, okay? this is an idea of Muslims that Jesus wrote a book called the Gospel, the Injil. Okay, but the Gospel it wasn't a book that Jesus had revealed to him like Muhammad had the Quran. Okay, Jesus didn't have that kind of gospel revelation in that way. But Jesus spoke, and the words which he spoke are recorded for us as the good news, the gospel of Jesus. Yeah. In fact, we would say there are 4 gospels because there are 4 accounts of the words of Jesus. Yeah.
I thought Jesus came. Well, my thing is he came with a book. He came because the Torah and the Psalms of David were flawed. So he came because he said, remember, he came to resurrect what was in the. He says he's not come with a new law. He's come to establish what was before.
He said, I've not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it.
But he came to continue the book of where the Jews went wrong in their scripture, where they took things out and messed it up.
Jesus did correct the Jews. Jesus did correct the common Jewish interpretations of the Torah. You're quite correct, yeah? But he never said that the Torah was corrupted or incorrect in any way. Okay, he accepted the Torah as, scripture, as God's authority.
You don't believe that the rabbis at that time fiddled around with the book?
No.
Because he said that he's come to, from what, I can't remember it verbatim, but he said he's come to...
not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, he said,
to clear up
no, he didn't say that.
a lot of the stuff that was going on.
No, he doesn't say that.
Because his rules...
only in the Quran. Only in the Quran are those words of Jesus, yeah?
What's your name again, sorry? Julian, sorry.
Yeah.
Zach, yeah?
Yeah.
From what I understand, Julian, is that the rules and the regulations, what the Jews were following, was corrupted. So he's come to re-establish what is from God, not what was going on in their book that was corrupted. Yeah. So he's come with a new truth, because that truth has been shunned, it's been distorted in some way.
No, he didn't do that. He didn't do that.
Because their rules were different to his.
Yeah, that's right.
The rabbis
Jewish
and Jesus
leaders,
were in agreement.
You're quite right. The Jewish leaders at the time of Jesus had interpretations and additions to the law which Moses had given in the Torah.
So they changed it.
So they had added and they had changed the interpretation, if you like, the application of the law of Moses. Yeah.
So
and Jesus did correct that. Jesus did correct the wrong application of the law, and he did, if you like, challenge the additions to the law. Okay, but Jesus never said that the law was corrupted. The law itself was corrupted. No. I know that in the Quran, the Quran does imply that Jesus brought a book which was going to correct the Torah and the Psalms and the books of the other prophets. Yeah, that is in the Quran. But that is not.
That's not a Christian belief.
Definitely not a Christian belief. It's not historical even. Okay. So that's why I cannot accept it. Yeah. The Torah. We have copies of all the books of the Old Testament, the Jewish scriptures, the Torah, the Psalms, and the books of all the other prophets. Yeah, that we now have in the Bible. What Christians call the Old Testament is the Jewish scriptures. Yeah. So we have copies of all those books except for one book, Esther, from before the time of Jesus. Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard of the Qumran or Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, I've heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, yeah.
So they were written between up to 250 years before the time of Jesus, yeah?
Do you accept the Dead Sea Scrolls?
I accept that they were written at the time before Jesus, yeah? And when we look at those copies, of the Bible books that were made at that time, we find that they are the same. Yeah, okay, there are one or two words which are different. There are variants. Can't deny that. There are one or two variants. But for example, in the book of Isaiah, we have many copies of the book of Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I think 11 different copies of the book of Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls, yeah? And in Isaiah chapter 53, which for Christians is a very important chapter of the Bible, because it talks about the suffering and the crucifixion of Jesus. In that book, there is only one variant, one word different, one extra word in the original that we do not have in our copies today. Yeah? Okay? So we know that the Jews were very good at copying, their scriptures. And they were very careful because they believed that was God's word to them, yeah? It's like Muslims today wouldn't deliberately go around, changing the Quran Okay, because that's, for Muslims, that is God's authoritative word to them. They would be very careful. That's why they're so careful about making sure they get the correct recitations and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So the same with the Jews at that time. They're very careful about preserving the law as it should be.
I don't know, because what Jesus came with and what the rabbis had, they was in contradiction. And I believe that Jesus was sent to correct the errors, but again, you don't believe that. But I believe he was there to correct the errors.
But
and
Jesus
tell the people,
Jesus never challenged anything or corrected anything which was in the law. Okay, he challenged the Jewish leaders' interpretations and applications of the law, and some additions as well, because they had added things, which were not actually in the Torah. He challenged those things, but he never said that the Torah or the Psalms or whatever, were corrupted and needed correction.
So let me ask you a question, Let me ask you a question. It's so loud here.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you a question. It's terrible.
Shall we move a bit further?
Yeah. You
Let's
see,
move a bit further,
it's only because trying to, you know what I mean? But what it is that I think there's something in the Bible that says, because I've got an aunt, she's a Seventh-day Adventist, and there's certain foods that she doesn't eat, certain seafoods. And I think in the Old Testament it says that there's certain food you shouldn't eat, like shellfish and crab and all that.
Okay.
But then I think in the New Testament it says Jesus has like overrid that basically.
Yes.
I can't remember the exact terminology.
Yeah, because Jesus declared all foods clean. Okay. In the Old Testament times, the people of Israel had to distinguish in various ways themselves from the nations around them. One of the ways in which they distinguished themselves was by not eating certain creatures,
Right, okay,
pig,
and
swine, certain seafoods like prawns and that kind of thing, okay. So they were distinguished. It was quite obvious they were different from the people around them. That's not the only way in which they made themselves different.
I understand.
And so they classified foods as being clean or unclean.
Yeah.
Okay. When Jesus taught his disciples, he said that it's not, and they thought that by eating these things they became unclean in God's sight. Yeah.
But there was laws, innit? There was commandments.
Yeah. So there are laws in the Torah about these foods. Okay. That they should not eat these foods to make themselves separate from the people around them. Yeah. When Jesus spoke about this, he said that it's not what goes inside a person that makes him unclean, because what goes into him eventually comes out again, Okay? He said it's not what you eat, if you like. It's not what goes into a person that makes him unclean. It's what comes out of him that makes him unclean. It's the things in our hearts. It's our attitudes, our, the hateful words, the lustful thoughts, the greed and things like that, things which are inside us, when they come out in our actions, that's what makes us unclean, not what goes into us. And therefore he declared that, obviously, although that was the way that the nation of Israel was to make themselves separate from people around them, for Christians, we are not the nation of Israel anyway, but we don't have to follow those clean and unclean laws.
But wasn't that a law before? It was a
law for the Israelites. It was a law for the Israelites,
So now it will be a new law with what it's saying, what Jesus came with. Because as I said, I've got an aunt that's a Seventh-day Adventist, and she believes in Christ.
Yes.
But she follows the old laws.
Yeah, you're right. So Seventh-day Adventists do follow some of those food laws. You're right.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Because I lived with a Seventh-day Adventist when I was a student.
Right. Okay.
And I know that he wouldn't eat pork, for example. Okay.
She don't eat pork.
Well, he would eat it if he had to, sort of thing, But suppose he went to someone's house and they had pork, whatever, serving pork, well, he would eat it just because it was polite. But of his own choice, he wouldn't have eaten it. Okay. So you're quite right. Seventh-day Adventists do still not keep some of those clean and unclean food laws.
But the point, the reason why I made that statement, is that in one book it says these foods are unclean, so don't eat them, and Jesus now come and say no, it's okay through me, it's all right. So wouldn't that be now a new law that he's now established onto what was before him or before?
What he's saying is
because he's come with a new rule now. He's coming with a new revelation.
You're quite right in a sense.
So they're not totally
They're not exactly the same. No, that's right. Because the laws which Moses gave in the Torah were for the Israelites, the nation of Israel. Okay.
But so was Jesus. He was an Israelite.
Jesus was an Israelite. You're quite right. Yeah. But his followers his kingdom, okay? He is a king of a kingdom, and his kingdom is not just of Israel. It's of all the peoples of the world.
He did say, though, he's only come for the people of Israel. I think in Mark, he's only come for the house of Israel. And I think in certain situations, he wasn't helping the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Someone asked for help, and he didn't want to help them because they was a Gentile. In the Bible, I mean.
Well, Jesus helped many Gentiles, okay? Actually, Jesus helped many Gentiles. He healed the Roman centurion's servant. He healed the Syrophoenician's woman's daughter. There are actually many Gentiles that Jesus helped and healed, okay? So that's a wrong idea for a start, that he wouldn't help Gentiles, okay? What you're talking about is an incident when Jesus was in Tyre, Sidon, the area of Tyre and Sidon, which was a Gentile area. It's not within Israel, okay? Jesus had gone away with his disciples to have a rest, okay? A little holiday, if you like, okay? Get away from it, from the pressure that there was in Jerusalem, okay? And when he went there, a Syrophoenician woman pleaded with him to heal her daughter from demon possession, okay?
Yeah.
Her daughter was suffering from demon possession.
Right.
And initially Jesus said that he'd come only for the house of Israel, okay? Which is true. Jesus did come to the people of Israel. He didn't come to the people of the world, okay? Although later he was to say that his gospel was to be preached throughout the world. Okay, his disciples were to spread the message of the gospel throughout the world. Jesus himself spoke to Israelites, okay?
Yeah.
He spoke to the people of Israel.
Yeah.
And he called the people of Israel to repent and to follow God, okay? So yes, Jesus did come for the people of Israel. And that was, if you like, his focus. That's what he came for.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
But then the Gentile woman said,
Is she demon possessed or something?
no,
You're saying?
I'm trying to remember this in the right sequence now.
Oh.
I'm trying to remember the right sequence. I don't want to mislead you.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So then Jesus said, it's not right to take the. I'm going to have to look this up because
no problem,
I don't want to. I really don't want to misquote it and mislead you.
problem.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to look it up for you.
All the money goes to launder it. You don't believe it.
Okay.
Beautiful world.
I've never heard that before, and I'm quite shocked.
About what?
That they don't believe that Jesus came with his own gospel. I've never heard that.
Oh, really?
I didn't know.
Right, okay.
I thought they believed that he came with a book.
No, Christians believe that.
Like it was a New Testament.
Yeah, that's right. We have the New Testament, which is a collection of books. 4 of them are the accounts of Jesus' life and teaching. That's what we call the Gospels. Yeah.
I thought, no,
There are 27 books in the New Testament, 27 different books, if you like, in the New Testament of the Bible. Yeah.
I thought
First 4 are the Gospels.
I thought he did come with his own book. I thought that was a Christian. I know it's a Muslim belief, but I thought it was a Christian belief also.
No.
But that somehow got distorted, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, ended up putting what they put in there. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I found the place where it actually.
Yeah.
So we're going to make that a bit smaller, maybe. Okay. So here it is, the faithful Canaanite woman. So leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman, so she's not a Jew, she's a Canaanite, she's a Gentile, yeah? From that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, she keeps crying after us." He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. So Jesus didn't want to heal her at that point, heal her daughter, sorry, at that point, yeah? Okay. He come here to have a rest, not to carry on healing, yeah? He replied, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs, okay? The word there means like a pet dog, like a puppy, yeah, okay? It's not the stray dog's kind of insult word, okay? Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. So she's saying, well, okay, so the idea is, Jesus has come to feed the Israelites, and she's saying, well, I know that I'm one of the dogs, but nevertheless, just like dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the table, so I am willing to take whatever you can give to me, yeah? Okay? So Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment.
Sorry.
Yeah,
so loud here. Sorry, read that part again. So, yes, it is, Lord. She said, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. Okay.
Yeah. So he did heal her daughter, but that wasn't, his purpose in coming to earth was not to go to the Gentiles. It was to go to the people of Israel. Yeah.
Okay, I have to do a bit of research. I would want to do a bit more research. I know what you said, but I would want to do a bit more on the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
Because I was under the illusion that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John never saw Christ, and these were books that they composed of hearing other people's statements, and then put it in the new.
That would be true of Luke, for example. That would be true of Luke, that he wasn't one of Jesus' disciples. He used the eyewitness testimony of other people who did know Jesus, yeah. So that is true of Luke. But for Matthew and John, definitely they were two of the 12 disciples. So they had first-hand experience, okay, eyewitness experience, yeah. And Mark, also known as John Mark, he was the associate, yeah, and he wrote down Peter's account, okay? Peter couldn't write Greek very well. We know that because Peter also has two other books in the New Testament. And in both of them, he tells us the name of the secretary who wrote it for him, okay? So he didn't write them himself because he also didn't feel confident to write good Greek. So he used secretary, if you like. He said it, and then the secretary put it in good Greek for him, yeah? Okay. So it's the same with Mark's Gospel. Mark wrote the account of Peter. Peter didn't write it himself. Yeah,
but I'm going to do some research on it. I'm definitely going to check it out. Because I was under the illusion that what you said happened with Mark happened with all of the rest. Because someone said to me that the New Testament came thousands of years after Christ passed away.
No.
It came many years.
No.
I know you said 20 to 50 or
20 to 50 years.
I heard it was thousands of years, and then the New Testament came into
the very last book of the New Testament was written in AD 95.
And how long was that before the...
So from say Jesus was crucified in AD 33, that's
55, what's that, like 20 years?
60 years, yeah?
60?
Is it? 33 from 95 is
from 95.
62 years, yeah? Okay. So that's the last book which we have in the New Testament, was written in AD 95.
And that was the Gospel of Mark?
No, that was the book of Revelation. It's the last one. Okay, that's in the New Testament. Matthew and Mark were both written in the early AD 50s, so about 20 years after Jesus' death and resurrection.
And it was all written down and given to the masses?
So they wrote it down and then it was copied, okay? It was copied by people, but they had to write it on a material called papyrus, which is a bit like paper. It's made by bashing reeds together, okay? They took reeds and hammered them together to make a kind of paper. So it's a kind of paper which they wrote on. That's what ordinary people wrote on in those days. Only rich people could afford to write on animal skin, okay, parchment. They wrote on papyrus, and they gave their copies to Christians, to churches, and those churches made multiple copies, gave them to other churches, they made multiple copies, made them to other churches, and so on like that, yeah? And that's how it is that we now have, thousands of manuscripts of New Testament books, okay? So it's like a family tree, if you like. So you start with, say, Mark's Gospel there, one copy, which he originally wrote, but then they made copies from that, and then each of those made copies and so on, yeah? So it's like a family tree. Now, we don't have any of the original copies of the New Testament books, right? Because papyrus usually does not last for more than about 100 years. It decays because it's plant material. It disintegrates eventually, yeah? So we do not have the original copy of, for example, Mark's Gospel.
No, no, there's no original.
What we have is the copies of the original, okay? Yeah? So now we have about 26,000 manuscripts, that is handwritten copies of New Testament books, yeah, in Greek. Sorry, in Greek it's 5,800. Something like that. 26,000 altogether, but 5,800 in Greek, okay? So they are not originals, they are copies of copies. But because we have so many hundreds, even thousands, of copies, we can compare them and we can see, are they the same or are they different, yeah? If there's any difference, we can then work out which is the original version. Because suppose that 99 copies have one word and the 100th copy doesn't have that one word, okay? We say the 99 copies are correct. Someone's made a mistake when they copied that one copy that doesn't have the word, yeah? Okay? So that's the science of textual criticism, as it's called, by comparing the manuscripts to be sure what the original text is.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah. So the earliest manuscript, the earliest piece of papyrus that we actually have is dated about 125 AD. So that's about 90 years after the lifetime of Jesus. Yeah.
But let me ask you another question. Just one question, and I'll be listening.
Yeah.
How can you guarantee that what those people wrote is completely accurate, bearing in mind you don't know the character of the people? So, for example, you can vouch all day for Jesus, all day, because you believe he's the Messiah.
Yeah.
But for the people that wrote on his behalf, and how could you guarantee what they said was solid?
Well, they're the same people which give us our, moral teaching in the New Testament. They're the people who tell us we must be honest, we mustn't lie, okay? So they wouldn't lie themselves, okay, if they're trying to teach us not to lie, yeah? Also, you've got to bear in mind that many of those people who wrote the account of Jesus' life, or who were his disciples who testified to it, yeah? Many of them were themselves killed for what they believed, okay? They believed that Jesus died and that he rose again from the dead. And because of that, many of them were killed, okay? They were executed, they were tortured, executed and so on. They wouldn't be willing to do that if they knew that what they were saying was a lie, yeah? I mean, people don't willingly subject themselves to torture and execution for something that they know is a lie.
Okay.
Yeah?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Okay.
Thanks again, Julie. It's always good talking to you.
Yeah, what was your name again?
Zach.
Yeah.
I spoke to you ages ago. I don't come
Did
here
you?
all the time.
Oh, right, okay.
I come here, he was with another young guy last time I come in.
Yeah.
I think it was his first time in Speaker's Corner. A young kid. Not young, he was possibly about mid-20s or something.
Yeah.
But that was the last time I was there. But
Okay.
it's interesting, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I don't know whether you ever read any of the Gospels. Obviously not, I think.
Yeah, no, I've read the Bible, not through and through,
Right.
but yeah.
Because, I can give you copies of the Gospels, yeah? And I'd love to do that, quite
No,
honestly.
I've got some at home. It's all right, man.
Yeah?
Honestly, I've got some
Yeah.
at home.
Right, okay.
I've
So these are the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John,
Yeah,
okay? And, yeah, I just suggest you read them, find out about Jesus, yeah?
I'm going to see what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah?
okay.
But yeah. Anyway, Julian, it's
Yeah.
nice speaking to you though, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll let you carry on.
Yeah.
All right then.
All right
No
then.
problems.
Yeah, and so that was a nice Muslim. Nice in the sense that he was prepared to have a civil conversation. And he was. His main two points of discussion were that first of all he got the idea that Jesus had received a revelation from God, a book. Okay, he thought that Jesus had received the gospel. Okay, and given and written a gospel for us, which is what Christians should be using. Yeah, and that's an idea that's come from Islam. It's not an idea which we get from the New Testament, from the Bible itself. Yeah, and his second. So I did talk to him quite a long time about the authors of the Gospels and how we know about the life of Jesus and how we know that it's true. The second sort of main point of discussion was about the age of the New Testament books. He was under the impression that the New Testament was thousands of years old. Okay, he didn't realize that the books of the New Testament are written within 65 years at most of the time of Jesus, and some of the gospel accounts are within, and some of the other books in the New Testament are written about 20 years after the time of Jesus. Yeah. So those are the main points of discussion, and I thought it was a good discussion. He was willing to listen. Yeah.
How do we know the New Testament is reliable?
Well, the New Testament, we have many thousands of copies of the manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts of the New Testament. Yeah, and by comparing those thousands of manuscripts, we have 5,800 or so Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. We look at those, we find that they are all almost exactly the same. There are variants between them. We know there are variants, we know there are slight differences of words here and there. But by comparing the thousands of manuscripts that we have in what's called the science of textual criticism, we can be pretty certain, what the original text was, even though there may be differences in some places.
So we've got manuscripts which shows us that New Testament is reliable. We do have translations of the New Testament which shows us it is reliable.
Yes,
Can you
that's
tell
right.
me,
Because the New Testament was written originally in Greek. The books of the New Testament were written in Greek, but we also have the translations, early translations from the early centuries in different languages, in Syriac, in Latin, and Coptic and other languages. Yeah. So even by comparing the Greek with the other translations, we can see, are there any major differences or not? Yeah, and the answer is no, there are not major differences.
So can you tell us why do historians do not turn to Quran to figure out the biography of Jesus? What did Jesus do? What did Jesus say? What did Jesus teach? Why do historians don't look up the Quran?
Okay, well, whereas the Gospels, the four Gospels of the New Testament, were written by people who lived in the time of Jesus, at least two of them were two of the 12 disciples of Jesus. In comparison, when we compare that with the Quran, which was written approximately 600 years after the time of Jesus, by someone who did not know Jesus, yeah, it's quite a contrast, really. Are we going to believe the testimony of the people who knew Jesus, who lived in his time, or are we going to believe the testimony of someone who lived 600 years later and didn't know Jesus? And I say we should trust the disciples.
Does it not correct that Quran also doesn't give us any detail for us to go and investigate?
That's true. The Quran's account of Jesus is much less than we find in the books of the New Testament. Okay, in the books of the New Testament we have thousands of verses, okay, which describe for us the life and the teaching of Jesus. The Quran has maybe, 65 references to Jesus, I think something like that. But the detail which is given in the Quran is small in comparison with what we find in the New Testament. So, which would I trust? The New Testament accounts of Jesus or the Quran's account of Jesus? I'm going to trust the New Testament, not the Quran.